Video contains violent content, details that are not suitable for common perception. Please consider before watching. Chapter 161. Proposition 1. A senior brother? Grand Leader Wu. The person lifted by Mok Jiangun's hand was none other than Wu Harang, the chief disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun and one of the Five Tigers, known as the top successors of the Heaven and Earth Society. He was known to be someone that only executives could handle, yet seeing him unconscious and covered in blood, as if he had suffered serious injuries, the disciple pair Yip Weixian and Transient Sword Group's leader Yang Ayao couldn't hide their shock. What's going on? Why was their senior brother in such a state? Yip Weixian had never seen his senior brother defeated by someone before. Yip Weixian's gaze momentarily turned towards Mok Jiangun. No. Absolutely not. For a moment he wondered if it was Mok Jiangun's doing. But that couldn't be. He had sparred with him before, so he knew his martial prowess. He believed Mok Jiangun was either at the pinnacle of peak realm or slightly above it. But for him to reduce his senior brother who had reached the peak realm to such a state? It was absurd. But then, thud. Transient Sword Group's leader Yang Ayao dropped the large stone he had placed on the short sword's blade and spoke with a gaze filled with wariness. Mok Jiangun. Is this your doing? Now what was this about? No matter how much that damned bastard possessed decent martial prowess that even their lord Wei So-yun showed interest in, he didn't have the ability to handle their senior brother. Brother Yang. That bastard's martial prowess is similar to mine. He's not capable of being an opponent for our senior brother. What are you talking about? Brother Yip. That Mok Jiangun has reached the peak realm, just like the grand leader of the Jiao Guao. At Yang Ayao's words, Yip Weixian showed a dumbfounded expression. Was he mocking him now? It hadn't even been half a month since he had encountered the bastard at the Corpse Blood Valley. But in that time, by what means had he reached the peak realm? Are you mocking me now? I've sparred with that bastard before. It's not a joke. Our Lord personally said so, and Zhang Nung, aka the society leader's second disciple, also acknowledged his martial prowess. What? Even their lord and Zhang Nung, aka acknowledged it? What in the world was going on? Did this make any sense? How could he have reached the peak realm in such a short time since they had sparred at the Corpse Blood Valley's non-stick pot? It was impossible to believe. As he was perplexed, Mok Jiangun said with a smile. I'll return him to you. What? Your senior brother. Take him. W8. What are you trying to? Whoosh. Before Yip Weixian could finish his words, Mok Jiangun casually tossed the unconscious Wu Harang, whom he had been holding with one hand, towards Yip Weixian as if he were a piece of luggage. Wu Harang's considerably large body flew towards Yip Weixian at a fast speed. Why, you bastard? Yip Weixian hurriedly spread his arms to catch Wu Harang. He drew upon a suitable amount of martial power, intending to stably receive his senior brother, but... Bang! Ugh! The moment he caught Wu Harang's body, the weight of the martial power contained within caused Yip Weixian's knees to buckle. Along with that, Yip Weixian's feet, skid, slid across the courtyard's ground, being pushed back by about 8 steps. Even this was only possible because he had gritted his teeth and endured it by drawing upon his 10th level martial power halfway through. Although it had happened in an instant, it felt quite lengthy to Yip Weixian. Thud. Yip Weixian's breathing became ragged as he struggled to set Wu Harang on the ground. What was that? What had just happened was the subtle principle of transferring flowers and connecting wood. If the orthodox method was to utilize the opponent's energy, transmitting energy to the opponent by imbuing it into something was also an application of transferring flowers and connecting wood. This was also called the technique of striking objects to transmit energy. It's impossible. This level of advanced subtle principle was not something that a martial artist who had reached the peak realm could execute. It was a technique that could only be used by those who had ascended to the peak realm and possessed a high level of understanding of energy. Yip Weixian found it difficult to accept even after experiencing it firsthand. There was anger towards the bastard, but this was also something that was impossible by common sense. How could he have gained enlightenment and reached a higher realm than himself in such a short time? As he was perplexed, Yang Ayao asked, was that just now striking objects to transmit energy? Brother Yip, are you all right? I'm fine. Although he had learned that the bastard's inner energy was extraordinary through the striking objects to transmit energy technique, he had not suffered internal injuries. He just felt unsettled and dirty. Then Mok Jae-eun spoke. That person. His acupoints have been sealed, so you'll need to release them for him to regain consciousness. What? You're saying you sealed our senior brother's acupoints? No. I didn't do it. At Mok Jae-eun's denial, Transient Sword Group's leader Yang Il asked in puzzlement. Then if it wasn't you, Mok Jae-eun, but someone else who sealed his acupoints, does that mean that person is the one who reduced the grand leader of the Jeokwal to this state? That's not it. It's true that he ended up like this after fighting me. Are you trying to play word games with us, you bastard? At Mok Jae-eun's words, Yip Hwai-seon shouted, his anger boiling over. Then Mok Jae-eun shrugged and said, It's the truth. And why would I joke with you? Joke? I get it now. What do you mean? Seeing that someone else sealed his acupoints, you ganged up on our senior brother and overwhelmed him. It makes sense. No matter how rapidly your martial arts have progressed, how could a bastard like you defeat our senior brother, one of the 5 tigers, alone? At Yip Hwai-seon's heated exclamation, Yang Il also glanced at Mok Jae-eun with a skeptical gaze. In fact, their lord, Hwai So-yeon, had said that Mok Jae-eun's martial prowess seemed to be at the beginning of the peak realm. That was why she had sent not Yang Il, whose martial prowess was similar to Mok Jae-eun's, but Wu Harang, who possessed the highest martial prowess among her subordinates. But if their lord's judgment was accurate, no matter how one thought about it, Mok Jae-eun's martial prowess alone couldn't have defeated Wu Harang. The gap between the beginning and the pinnacle of peak realm is significant. Yang Il himself had also sparred with Wu Harang and lost, so he had experienced that gap firsthand. The title of the 5 tigers was not something anyone could receive. Wasn't Wu Harang a monster among the successors who were known to be unrivaled by anyone except the executives? In that case, Yip Hwai-seon's words about a joint attack also made sense. Could it be that he has joined hands with them? In fact, what their lord, Hwai So-yeon, had been concerned about was Mok Jae-eun entering under the faction of Jang Nung-ak, the society leader's second disciple. Judging from Jang Nung-ak's attitude, he already seemed to be quite close to Mok Jae-eun. Yang Il's eyes widened as if he had realized something, and he whispered to Yip Hwai-seon, I think Brother Yip is right. What do you mean by that? I heard that one of Jang Nung-ak's close subordinates, Wu Mengchun of the 2 Peaks, was murdered last night. What? At this, Yip Hwai-seon's eyes widened. What in the world had happened while he was in secluded training? Yang Il continued. I thought it was strange that Jang Nung-ak kept glaring at our lord and grand leader Wu with eyes full of killing intent at the Baek clan's residence. Then there's no doubt that the bastard hostage of the righteous faction and Jang Nung-ak's subordinates ganged up on our senior brother and reduced him to this state. Those foolish persons. What nonsense are they spouting? At Chong Ryung's words, Mok Jae-eun chuckled. There was no way they couldn't hear him even if they whispered. He hadn't said a word, yet they were piecing together the situation in their own way. It was him who had killed Wu Mengchun, Jang Nung-ak's close subordinate, and it was also him who had reduced Wu Harang, Hwai So-yeon's subordinate, to this state, but there was no connection between the 2 incidents. However, it was quite amusing to see them linking unrelated incidents together. They're fun to play with. That was the extent of Mok Jae-eun's judgment. But now he had no business with them. If you want to continue your conversation, go ahead. I'm here to see young lady Hwai So-yeon. She's inside the main hall, right? Mok Jae-eun tried to take a step forward. At that moment, Shing. Yip Hwai-seon drew his unique weapon, the Jeo Hyung-do, which he had been carrying on his back. Then he aimed the tip of the blade at Mok Jae-eun and shouted, How dare you try to meet the lady with those filthy feet? You're really making this troublesome. What? I haven't agreed to your interesting speculation, so why don't you just release that person's acupoints and confirm it directly? Mok Jae-eun tried to take another step forward. At that instant, a sharp murderous intent rose from the ground just 3 steps ahead of Mok Jae-eun, drawing a line. Swish. The one who drew that line was none other than Transient Sword Group's leader, Yang Il. With his sword radiating murderous intent, ready to strike at any moment, Yang Il warned, abandon any thoughts of crossing that line. At his strong warning, Yip Hwai-seon thought it was fortunate. He had already judged that he had no chance in a one-on-one confrontation due to Mok Jae-un's sudden advancement. However, the situation was different if they fought together. Transient Sword Group's leader, Yang Il, was an outstanding talent who had reached the beginning of the peak realm. Excluding their senior brother, he could be considered the left arm of their lord, Wai So-yun. If they fought together, the advantage would be theirs. That son of a bitch. Perfect. Moreover, back then he had been careful not to fully unleash his techniques because they were inside the treasure-filled corpse Blood Valley. But now it was different. In this spacious courtyard he could use his full power. Brother Yang, I'll join you. Step. Yip Wai-sian stood beside Transient Sword Group's leader Yang Il and assumed a starting stance. A joint attack might be cowardly, but they had sufficient justification. After all, there was suspicion that the bastard had also used a joint attack against their senior brother. But then Mok Jae-un waved his hand lightly as if he found it bothersome and said, "Let's stop this. I didn't come here to fight but to see young lady Wai So-yun." Shut up. Do you think our lord would meet with a mere hostage of the righteous faction? That's strange. From what I remember your senior brother saying, young lady Wai So-yun had summoned me. Isn't that right? That's... The answer to this came from Yang Il, who was standing next to him. She did summon you. Because our lord highly values you. But do you think we'll let you meet the lady so casually after you've seriously injured the grand leader of the Jiuguo, who went to fetch you? You're not making sense. Then why don't you just wake up that person and ask him directly? What? You keep talking as if I was the one who attacked him first, so why don't you release his acupoints and directly? Oh no. Mok Jae-un stopped mid-sentence and shook his head. Then he said to them, "Why don't you two just attack me together?" What? You're telling us to attack together? Didn't you hear me? I said it would be better if I defeat both of you and go. That way even the lady will feel the impact. At Mok Jae-un's words, Transient Sword Group's leader Yang Il's eyes sharpened. Unlike Yip Wai-sian's words, he had no intention of launching a joint attack or attacking Mok Jae-un first. He still couldn't be sure about the truth. However, as a martial artist, such provocation was quite irritating. Are you underestimating me and Brother Yip? Underestimate? Of course not. Then why are you telling us to attack simultaneously? At Yang Il's question, Mok Jae-un replied with a smile. It's bothersome to deal with you one by one, and you're not at a high enough level, so I'm telling you to attack together. Grit. Yang Il gritted his teeth. He usually responded calmly to provocations. However, he was already quite displeased by the statement that Mok Jae-un had defeated Wu Harang, who was like their eldest brother, so when Mok Jae-un provoked him like this, he couldn't endure it. Is that so? Then let's see how strong you are. Whoosh. Yang Il launched his figure towards Mok Jae-un. Likewise, Yip Wai-sian, who was angry at Mok Jae-un's provocation and had been waiting for an opportunity to launch a joint attack, kicked off the ground in sync with Yang Il and launched his figure. Kohima Jungjam's fourth stance, gathering shadows and marking promises. Renowned Sun Blade Technique's second hidden stance, proclaiming harm and recounting faults. Yang Il and Yip Wai-sian simultaneously swung their sword and blade, attempting to unleash their ultimate techniques. It was at that very moment. Swish. Clang. No way. Gasp. In an instant, Mok Jae-un's figure blurred and reappeared in front of them, his hands already grasping the blades of their sword and blade before they could even execute their ultimate techniques. Both Yang Il and Yip Wai-sian couldn't hide their bewilderment at what had happened in a single moment. What in the world was going on? They couldn't even see his movements. Crack. What strength? I can't pull out the blade. They tried to draw upon their martial power to pull out their sword and blade, but they wouldn't budge. To them, Mok Jae-un nonchalantly said, "You're slow. You bastard." Whoosh. Yang Il released the sword he was holding and gathered his index and middle fingers, raising murderous intent to pierce Mok Jae-un's Adam's apple. However, thud. Before he could do so, Mok Jae-un's kick struck his head. Along with his brain being shaken, Yang Il's eyes rolled back and he slumped to the ground. Thud. You didn't expect me to just wait for you to hit me, did you? Mok Jae-un sneered at the unconscious Yang Il. Seeing this scene, Yip Wai-sian was so shocked that his face turned pale, and his hands and feet began to tremble. What the hell was this? Wasn't he someone who had been almost evenly matched with him not long ago? But how had he become this strong? Although Yang Ayao was at the beginning stage, he had reached the peak realm, so even Wu Harang, one of the 5 tigers, couldn't defeat him in an instant like this. Why, you bastard, just what? If you know you can't match me in skill, wouldn't it be better to politely step aside? Grip. At Mok Jiongun's arrogant words, Yip Weixian bit his lip hard. He had already experienced that he was no match for Mok Jiongun when he used the striking objects to transmit energy technique. But he didn't want to show any weakness to this bastard. At this, Yip Weixian abruptly swung a fist at Mok Jiongun and shouted, "You son of a bitch!" Smack. Ack. The fist didn't even touch him. Before he could even finish his words, Mok Jiongun grabbed Yip Weixian's neck and lifted him up. Then with an eerie smile he said to the struggling Yip Weixian, "Don't use such strong language. It makes you look weak." Shudder. For a moment, goosebumps rose from Yip Weixian's spine, and his eyes reddened with fear. It was at that very moment. Stop. The sound of someone's shout was heard. The owner of that shout was none other than Why young lady. Why So-yun, the society leader's 3rd disciple. She had emerged from the main hall building and was looking at Mok Jiongun with surprised eyes. Chapter 162, Proposition 2. If one were to pick the most outstanding subordinate among the followers of the society leader's 3rd disciple, Why So-yun, it would undoubtedly be Wu Horang, the chief disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun and the leader of the Giant Watchtower Group. His martial arts prowess was recognized by all, as he was included among the 5 tigers, known as the best late-stage masters of the Heaven and Earth Society. However, the person she confided in the most among her followers was Ji Okurayan, a fellow woman. Ji Okurayan was the eldest daughter of Sun Rock Valley Master Ji Hei and Wai So-yun's closest friend and true right-hand woman. Swish. Ji Okurayan pulled out a needle from the back of Wai So-yun, who had her upper body clothes pulled down, exposing half her back. The sharp tip of the needle she pulled out had turned black. As I thought, there was still some poison remaining. But seeing only a part of the needle discolored, it seems the detoxification is almost complete. Young lady, are you feeling better now? Thanks to you. The Sun Rock Valley Master was skilled in medical arts, so Ji Okurayan had also inherited that ability. Thus, she had helped to quickly expel the remaining poisons left in Wai So-yun's body using acupuncture. The poison of the Elder Poison King must be truly formidable. In terms of internal energy alone, you should be no less than Elder Poison King, young lady. Perhaps not anymore. You've crossed the threshold. It was truly ironic. On the day they visited, Poison King Baek Saha had reached the transformation realm. As a result, his importance had increased significantly. If Poison King Baek Saha, now a master of the transformation realm, supported them, it would be equivalent to gaining an army of thousands. However, the key was how to bring him over to their side. Mok Jiongun. It had become difficult to persuade Poison King Baek Saha directly. Therefore, currently the only route to gain Baek Saha's support was through Mok Jiongun. This was because Baek Saha had accepted Mok Jiongun as his disciple. As a result, Mok Jiongun's value had risen tremendously. Mok Jiongun was the joint disciple of Shadow Clan Master and Poison King, so if they could bring him under their wing, they would be able to draw in both Shadow Clan and Baek Clan. They had to bring him in at all costs, but she was inwardly worried. I'm concerned that the 2nd senior brother might resort to underhanded means. 2nd young master? Yes. It's because of that incident, isn't it? Right. 2nd senior brother's anger seemed immense. Even so, would he openly do something? It's not like we were the ones responsible, as you said. When the roots of suspicion run deep, one becomes blind to reason. That may be true, but I don't understand why this misfortune has befallen us. Why did such a thing suddenly happen, causing us to be suspected in this way? Wait a moment. Young lady, could this be a scheme to drive a wedge between us? Ji Okurayan raised a question. At her words, Wai So-yun's eyes narrowed. That was because Wai Mengqion, a trusted subordinate of 2nd senior brother Jiang Nung AK from the Five Evils Association, had been assassinated by someone the previous night. This had greatly angered 2nd senior brother. Although he was bedridden, their master still had his eyes wide open, so until now, there had been no incidents of the 3 disciples crossing the line or clashing significantly. However, that balance had now been shattered. Given 2nd senior brother's temperament, having lost a cherished subordinate, He would undoubtedly seek revenge in some way. But the important thing here was that this was not their doing. Why do you think it's a scheme to drive a wedge between us? Isn't it obvious? Due to Wai Mengqian's death, we are now under suspicion from second young master. If this continues, we will inevitably clash. So you think it's a scheme to drive a wedge between us? What else could it be? If it is indeed such a scheme, whose doing do you think it is? In response to Wai Soyun's question, Giok Ryan answered with a confident voice. Isn't it most likely the eldest young master or his subordinates? First senior brother? Yes. They are the only ones who stand to benefit from this situation. At Giok Ryan's words, Wai Soyun rested her chin on her clasped hands. If one only considered the circumstances, the probability of it being first senior brother, as she speculated, was indeed high. After all, they were truly not responsible. However, is it really first senior brother? What? It seems a bit different from first senior brother's style. Different, you say? If not the eldest young master, there would be no reason for anyone else to do such a thing. It must be a ploy to make us and second young master's factions fight. Wai Soyun shook her head slightly at Giok Ryan's words. Of course, there was some truth to her words. This was because the reason second senior brother suspected her instead of first senior brother for the death of his subordinate Wai Mengqian, and the reason she found the situation itself suspicious, overlapped. That reason was first senior brother. First senior brother doesn't even consider us as rivals. If he had, he would have tried to keep them in check somehow in the past. First senior brother was thorough, so if he considered someone an enemy, he would thoroughly crush them. Yet he had simply observed as if watching from the sidelines as they gathered supporters to become the successor. He did not interfere at all, even though it could have made him uncomfortable. If first senior brother had been determined to suppress us, he wouldn't have left us alone like this until now. First senior brother Na Yulriang was somehow different from ordinary people. Conversing with him made one feel inexplicably suffocated and even fearful. That was why she had avoided meeting him since their master had taken to his sickbed. This would be the same for second senior brother Zhang Nengyi. Apart from their master, the person he feared the most was none other than first senior brother. At this, Wai Soyun cautiously spoke. Perhaps an unexpected variable has emerged. Startled. At that moment, Wai Soyun suddenly stopped speaking and looked somewhere. Giok Ryan asked in puzzlement. Young lady. Something has happened outside. Something. Quickly remove the remaining needles. Why yes. Giok Ryan hastily removed all the needles stuck in Wai Soyun's acupoints. After swiftly putting on her top and adjusting her clothes, Wai Soyun hurriedly opened the door and went outside. Of course, Giok Ryan followed behind her. Hearing the commotion from outside, Wai Soyun, who had come out, couldn't hide her surprise at the scene unfolding before her eyes. Thud. Crush. Yang Il, the young sect leader of the transient sword group, collapsed after being hit by Mok Jiongun's kick in an instant. Giok Ryan, who followed behind, was equally surprised. Who was Yang Il? In terms of martial arts, he was the second-ranked expert among Wai Soyun's subordinates, at the early stage of the transcendent realm. Yet he was taken out with a single strike? Impossible. How could this happen? Then someone else caught Giok Ryan's eye. It was none other than a senior brother Wu Horang. He was lying on the ground, covered in blood as if he had been severely injured. Why is senior brother Wu like this? Giok Ryan, who had secretly been in love with him for a long time, was startled by this sight and tried to run out immediately. Wai Soyun stopped her by extending her hand. After holding back Giok Ryan, Wai Soyun shouted in a loud voice. Stop. Wai Soyun's shout resonated far and wide. At her shout, Mok Jiongun, who was gripping Yip Weixian's neck, turned his head. You've come out. What is this rampage? In response to her question, Mok Jiongun shrugged his shoulders and replied. Rampage? I simply came because the young lady called for me, but these people tried to stop me. Mok Jiongun pointed with his eyes, first at Yang Il, who was unconscious on the ground, and then at Yip Weixian, whose neck was grasped in his hand. Ak. Yip Weixian struggled with a distressed expression, his face turning red as if it would burst from the bulging veins. Wai Soyun pointed at him with her finger and said, Let go of that hand right now. This. Mok Jaeong-un smiled brightly and loosened his grip. With that, Yi Pwai-sien fell to the ground with a thud, landing on his bottom. Perhaps because his breathing had been obstructed by his neck being grabbed, Yi Pwai-sien coughed violently and tried to say something to Wai So-yun. This runt. Smack. Mok Jaeong-un lightly struck the back of Yi Pwai-sien's neck. Perhaps due to the shock to his brain, Yi Pwai-sien toppled forward in that state and collapsed. What are you doing? Stop. As Gio Kirayan tried to step forward, unable to contain her anger at the sight of her companions being treated in such a way, Wai So-yun restrained her. Then she spoke to Mok Jaeong-un. You'll have to explain properly what exactly happened here. Otherwise, even if it's you, I won't be able to forgive you. At her words, Mok Jaeong-un scratched his head as if he were in a difficult position. This is quite troublesome. I simply came to see the young lady, but these two gentlemen insisted that they couldn't let me meet you. They stopped you. Yes. Why did they do that? That's what I'd like to ask. Even though it was their master who summoned me. Wai So-yun's eyes sharpened at the feeling that he was somehow pinching her. While he had always been brazen in front of her, there was something strangely different from before. It wasn't simply being bold in front of a powerful figure, but truly stemming from self-confidence. This made her question. Undoubtedly, this man seemed to have made further progress in the meantime. What is it? Wai So-yun couldn't hide her puzzlement. Even when she saw him in the Corpse Blood Valley report, she had been greatly surprised by his significantly improved martial arts compared to before. And now his martial prowess had advanced again? While she was finding his rapid progress strange, Mok Jaeong-un spoke. If you truly find it hard to believe, why don't you wake them up and ask them? Seeing him go this far, it seemed clear that they had indeed tried to stop Mok Jaeong-un. But the reason seemed to be that. Wai So-yun pointed at Wu Horang, who was lying on the ground, with a nod of her head and said, Why is Wu Horang in such a state? This person? He fought with me. What? At those words, Wai So-yun furrowed her brows. Fight, what did he mean? That can't be. Wu Horang received my order to bring you here. He wouldn't fight you without my command. Moreover, Wu Horang knew the importance of Mok Jaeong-un. He would know better than anyone that the dynamics of this successor competition would change if they could obtain him, so why would he go to bring Mok Jaeong-un and end up fighting him? It didn't make sense. Then could it be? Did you challenge Wu Horang to a duel first? There's no way that would happen. This person cited 2 reasons and requested a sparring match with me. 2 reasons. Yes. What are they? The first reason is difficult for me to disclose due to an agreement with him, and the second reason was that he had to take revenge because that junior brother of his was put in a difficult position because of me. At Mok Jaeong-un's words, Gio Kirayan shouted with a flushed face. Revenge? What nonsense. Why would senior brother Wu disobey the young lady's orders and do such a thing to you? Okay, Ryan. That's enough. Young lady. But this fellow is now slandering senior brother Wu with lies. Before she could finish her sentence, Mok Jaeong-un interjected. If you truly can't believe it, you can wake him up and ask him as well, can't you? What? You said you couldn't believe that this person initiated the fight, right? At Mok Jaeong-un's words, Gio Kirayan shouted defiantly. Do you know why I can't believe your words? It doesn't make sense for senior brother Wu, one of the 5 tigers, to lose to the likes of you. Okay, Ryan. Wai So-yun finally raised her voice. Sensing that her mood had turned unpleasant, Kirayan trembled with a flushed face and soon closed her mouth. I apologize. Calm down and step back. I know your heart well. Being the only one who knew that Gio Kirayan had feelings for Wu Horang, she patted her shoulder as if to comfort her and told her to step back. Watching them, Mok Jaeong-un shook his head from side to side. Seeing this, Wai So-yun spoke in a cold voice. What is that attitude right now? Attitude? Your current attitude seems to be mocking me. Rather than that, it has made me more confident. Confident? Yes. What have you become confident about? In response to Wai So-yun's question, Mok Jaeong-un smirked and said, I just thought you had no luck with subordinates, but it seems you also pamper your subordinates quite a bit, young lady. How dare you? Jaeogryan, who thought he had insulted the young lady, raised her voice again. At that moment, swish. Mok Jaeong-un's figure dispersed like mist and disappeared. At the same time, Wai Soyun turned her body with a surprised expression and reached out her hand, but thud. Ugh. Before her hand could even touch, a dull sound rang out, and Ji Okurayan's eyes rolled back as her body toppled forward. Behind the collapsing Ji Okurayan, Mok Jae-eun stood with his hand raised. Clicking his tongue, Mok Jae-eun spoke as if disappointed. Why do they all ignore what their master says one after another? You. This is rather fortunate. I wanted to have a private conversation with you. Smiling brightly, Mok Jae-eun looked at Wai Soyun, who spoke with surprised eyes. How do you know the clear and manifest water crossing steps? The high-speed movement technique Mok Jae-eun had just displayed. If her eyes weren't mistaken, it was the clear and manifest water crossing steps, a unique movement technique of first senior brother Na Yeol-ryang. Chapter 163. Proposition 3. This is. For a moment, Wai Soyun couldn't hide her surprise. The high-speed movement technique Mok Jae-eun had just displayed. If her eyes weren't mistaken, it was the clear and manifest water crossing steps, a unique movement technique of first senior brother Na Yeol-ryang. Master, why is first senior brother's movement technique different from ours? Oh. Are you referring to the clear and manifest water crossing steps? Clear and manifest water crossing steps. Yes. The clear and manifest water crossing steps, the unique movement technique of the Na family that your first senior brother has mastered, was once considered one of the 3 greatest movement techniques in the Central Plains. The best movement technique, you say? Indeed. Along with the cloud ladder stride of the Wudong sect, known for its profound mysteriousness, and the wind and cloud steps of the Peerless Fortress, which has disappeared as a remnant of the old martial world but was regarded as the best in terms of swiftness and versatility, it gained fame as one of the 3 greatest movement techniques. To think he has mastered such an amazing technique. But that's a thing of the past now. If you complete the sun and moon steps that I have imparted to you, you will be able to dominate the world with a single step. Dominate the world. Suddenly, the words her master had spoken to her more than a decade ago came to mind. Even after 10 years, Wai Soyun still hadn't fully grasped the profound principles of the sun and moon steps. No, she wasn't even sure if it was truly a stepping technique that could dominate the world, as her master had said. Because no matter how much she practiced, she couldn't surpass first senior brother's clear and manifest water crossing steps. The same was true for second senior brother Jang Nungi. Anyway, that wasn't the important thing right now. How do you know the clear and manifest water crossing steps? Clear and manifest water crossing steps? Yes. Do you think I wouldn't recognize first senior brother's clear and manifest water crossing steps? Ah. Mok Jae-eun let out a small gasp. They certainly seemed to be senior and junior disciples. He had closely observed Na Yeol-ryang's movement technique during their confrontation, finding it to be quite efficient, and had learned the stepping method. But to think she could recognize it at a glance. You have keen eyes. Pat. As soon as those words ended, the tip of Wai Soyun's index and middle fingers, forming a sword finger, touched Mok Jae-eun's neck. The sharp aura flowing from it was like a sword. Mok Jae-eun's eyes twinkled with interest. It was because there was not a single wasted movement in her actions. Your hands are fast. Just what are you? Pardon? Could it be that first senior brother planted you? First senior brother? Are you referring to eldest young master Na Yeol-ryang? Don't play dumb. First senior brother doesn't even reveal the secrets of his stepping technique or breathing method to master. Do you think such a first senior brother would carelessly teach his unique movement technique to others? At her words, Mok Jae-eun chuckled. You're laughing now? I apologize. It seems I've caused a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Yes. What misunderstanding are you talking about? It's true that I learned this movement technique from young master Na Yeol-ryang, but it's not what you think. Not what I think? Yes. Rather, should I say I just learned it? Just learned it? What nonsense are you spouting? One of Wai Soyun's eyebrows arched upwards. She thought Mok Jae-eun was toying with her. No, from the moment he had reduced her subordinates to this state right before her eyes, he had already crossed the line of no return. Whoosh. A strong murderous aura emanated from Wai Soyun. It was as if she would pierce or slash Mok Jae-eun's neck at any moment. However, despite having such immense anger and killing intent, she was restraining herself. The reason was that if Na Yulriang was behind Mok Jaeongun, the moment she attacked him, she would be making enemies of not only first senior brother but also Shadow Clan Master and Poison King. Why So-yun spoke, maintaining as much composure as possible. Speak clearly. What is your relationship with first senior brother? There's no particular relationship. You expect me to believe those words. Come to think of it, I should say we have a rather unpleasant relationship now. An unpleasant relationship? Yes. Wouldn't it be better to talk about you and me rather than that? At Mok Jaeongun's words, Why So-yun snorted. Having first senior brother Poison King and Shadow Clan Master backing you up, I guess you've lost sight of everything? Seeing as you don't even bother answering my questions. At her sharp words, Mok Jaeongun shrugged his shoulders and said, I've given you proper answers. If there's anything else you'd like to ask. Swish. At that moment Why So-yun's left hand moved. She moved her hand with lightning speed, attempting to strike Mok Jaeongun's chest acupoints. However, Why So-yun furrowed her brows. It was because her wrist, which was trying to strike the acupoints, was suddenly caught by Mok Jaeongun. This caused a hint of wariness to appear in her eyes. He caught my wrist? She had already been convinced that Mok Jaeongun's martial arts had advanced compared to before. Therefore, without holding back, she had properly utilized her acupoint striking technique. Yet he had intercepted her wrist. That meant Mok Jaeongun's martial arts had become much stronger than she had anticipated. Just how much stronger have you become? Why So-yun asked bluntly without beating around the bush. In response to her question, Mok Jaeongun answered nonchalantly. Who knows? It seems my skills are not yet satisfactory. What? Was he toying with her now? His martial arts had improved to the point where he could easily catch her wrist when she was determined to strike his acupoints, yet he claimed it wasn't satisfactory? Of course this was true. Mok Jaeongun was not at all satisfied with his current martial arts. However, from Why So-yun's perspective, there was no way she could believe Mok Jaeongun's true intentions. Just who are you really? A member of the orthodox Yun Mok Sword Manor. A hostage of the orthodox faction captured by the Heaven and Earth Society. The top graduate of the Corpse Blood Valley. A disciple of Shadow Clan Master. A disciple of Poison King Baek Saha. In less than half a month his martial arts had rapidly improved, and he had even mastered first senior brother Na Yulriang's unique movement technique. Each and every step was so difficult to understand that it was hard to make connections. Why So-yun glared at Mok Jaeongun and said, Could it be that you're first senior brother's disciple? I told you I'm not. If you're not, then provide clear evidence that you're really not. At that moment, before Why So-yun could finish her sentence, Mok Jaeongun pointed to his waist. There was a small blood-stained leather pouch on Mok Jaeongun's waist. What is this supposed to mean? Should I say there's something like a trophy inside? Trophy? What nonsense was this fellow spouting now? Seeing it, Why So-yun's eyes widened. You. What Mok Jaeongun held in his hand was none other than an eyeball. However, this eyeball was somewhat different from that of an ordinary person, as the pupil had a silvery hue. Upon seeing this, Why So-yun's expression soon froze. For a moment she found it hard to believe. If her thinking was correct, the owner of this eyeball was none other than first senior brother? Wow. You recognized it at a glance, just like the movement technique. This. How? For a moment Why So-yun was utterly confused. She had seen the pupil of first senior brother's right eye taking on a silvery hue only once. It was during his confrontation with Thunderbolt Fist King Won Byung-hak. She had attended the confrontation to witness the martial arts of the Five Kings, the top experts and highest-ranking members of the Heaven and Earth Society, as opportunities to observe their skills were rare. At that time, Why So-yun had seen the change in one of first senior brother's eyes. Impossible. But what was going on here? How did Mok Jaeongun have this in his possession? How did you? How do I have this, you ask? As I mentioned, it's like a trophy. A trophy? Could it be that he had fought first senior brother? As she was perplexed, Mok Jaeongun smiled brightly and said, I think this is enough to explain my relationship with the young master. Now shouldn't we talk about you and me? You and me. Yes. Didn't I tell you earlier? I wanted to have a private conversation with you. But now how about you remove this hand? Mok Jae-eun gestured with his eyes towards Wai So-yeon's sword finger. However, with her wariness at its peak, there was no way she would easily withdraw her sword finger. I can't believe it. First let's remove this. First senior brother has crossed the threshold and reached the transformation realm. He's a peerless master. How can you have first senior brother's eye? Wai So-yeon's voice grew louder. All her attention was now focused solely on this matter. Although she had been praised by her master for possessing such innate talent and martial potential, no matter how much her martial arts progressed, she couldn't imagine a scenario where she could defeat first senior brother. Yet how could this person who was merely at the peak realm just half a month ago, possibly bring down first senior brother? It's impossible. Even if your martial arts have advanced, first senior brother is. Yes. It seems it would still be difficult to handle him alone. What? If master hadn't helped, it would have been challenging to subdue him smoothly. Master, you say? Poison King Master assisted me halfway through. As a result, my original intention to stay quiet was slightly disrupted. What are you talking about? It's exactly as you heard. As you can see, it seems I'll be at odds with the young master because of this incident. Thanks to that, it has become quite troublesome. I'm not ready to face the young master yet, and I've heard that his supporting forces are the most solid among the three successors. Swish. With those words, Mok Jae-eun put the eyeball back into the pouch. Then he casually grasped Wai So-yeon's sword finger. Wai So-yeon's pupils trembled. Although it wasn't a strong energy concentrated with internal force, he remained unfazed even while holding her hand that had been sharpened with a keen aura. Not stopping there, Mok Jae-eun tried to remove her sword finger from his neck. With her wariness reaching its peak, Wai So-yeon drew upon her internal energy. Good. If he truly has the skills to compete with first senior brother, I'll see for myself how much his internal energy has increased. Whoosh. For the first time in several years, Wai So-yeon raised her internal energy to its extreme. Due to her innate physique, she was unrivaled in terms of internal energy, surpassing even second senior brother Jang Nung-ik. She was even praised for being close to the transformation realm. Ho! Mok Jae-eun's eyes twinkled with interest. With his spiritual eye open, he had estimated her energy to some extent. But it was exceeding his expectations. Crack. As the confrontation of internal energy unfolded in an instant, cracks appeared on the ground of the courtyard where they stood. The dirt and sand on the ground even trembled and scattered in all directions. Rumble. The energy of the two was so strong that the cracks on the ground widened further. Wai So-yeon, who was drawing upon more energy, couldn't help but be inwardly surprised. Although she hadn't crossed the threshold yet, thanks to her unique body structure called the Heavenly Een Absolute Meridians, her internal energy was close to the transformation realm. However, Mok Jae-eun didn't yield to her internal energy in the slightest. Soon Wai So-yeon felt blood rising from her stomach to her throat. Thanks to her master, she could handle the energy of the Heavenly Een Absolute Meridians, but if she exceeded the limit of internal energy she could endure, her entire body's meridians would run wild. Wai So-yeon looked at Mok Jae-eun. Unlike herself, who was gradually struggling, Mok Jae-eun showed no change in expression and remained at ease. As a result, she had no choice but to admit it. Going further is too much. If she continued the confrontation, it would be to her disadvantage. Looking at Mok Jae-eun now, he wasn't using his full strength but was drawing upon his energy to match her internal energy. It was true after all. There was no doubt that this child had crossed the threshold. Realizing this, she felt a sense of absurdity and even despair. Eventually, Wai So-yeon began to lower her internal energy little by little. He was retreating. Swish. As they both lowered their internal energy, the dirt and sand that had been scattering in all directions settled down. Wai So-yeon spoke with genuine astonishment. You're truly a monster. I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or not. I've never seen someone whose martial arts advance as rapidly as yours. Even first senior brother, who was praised as a genius, wouldn't have been like this. Who knows? That's something we can't be sure of. Wai So-yeon clicked her tongue inwardly, thinking Mok Jae-eun was being modest. However, Mok Jae-eun truly had no particular feelings about it. To such Mok Jae-eun, Wai So-yeon said, I think I know why you fought with first senior brother. You think you know? Yes. Even if first senior brother desires talented individuals, he doesn't want those he can't handle. At her words, Mok Jae-eun chuckled. As expected of senior and junior disciples, she knew young master Na Yulriang quite well. Since you know that well, I suppose you also know why I came here. Since you said you're at odds with first senior brother, you probably need the shelter of other successors, right? Well, you could say it's a similar reason. At Mok Jae-eun's answer, Wai So-yeon spoke as if she couldn't understand. But then why did you go this far? If you need me in the end. No, that's not it. Before Wai So-yeon could finish her sentence, Mok Jae-eun denied it. She furrowed her brows and said, Not it, you say? Then why did you do all this? To show you. What? To show you how incompetent you are as a successor. At Mok Jae-eun's cutting words, Wai So-yeon's expression turned fierce. So, after reducing her subordinates to such a state and seeking to have a private conversation, was he aiming to say such things? As she was feeling angry and dumbfounded, Mok Jae-eun spoke with a smile. So, about that body of yours, give it to me. In an instant her expression hardened. Chapter 164, Proposition 4. To show you how incompetent you are as a successor. At Mok Jae-eun's insulting words, Wai So-yeon's expression turned fierce. To become the society leader's successor, she had shouldered many burdens. How dare he judge her so presumptuously, as if he knew the weight of the path she bore? Clench. You. Just as Wai So-yeon was about to unleash her anger while biting her lip, Mok Jae-eun spoke with a bright smile. So, about that body of yours, give it to me. In an instant Wai So-yeon's expression hardened. For a moment she doubted her own ears. What did this person just say to her? Give her body to him? Flush. Repeating the words she heard in her mind, her face turned as red as a persimmon in an instant. It was a humiliating feeling she had never experienced before in her life. To Wai So-yeon's ears, this absurd request made by Mok Jae-eun sounded like he was blatantly toying with her. Since she had decided to walk the path of a successor, she had given up on a life as a woman. Yet was this bastard mocking her? Whoosh. Wai So-yeon couldn't endure it any longer. In an instant, a sharp murderous intent rose from her sword fingers, attempting to slash Mok Jae-eun's neck. I'll kill you. However, swish. Mok Jae-eun lightly evaded her murderous intent with a half-step movement and grasped her wrist. But unlike before, since she had truly made up her mind to kill Mok Jae-eun, there was no way she would stop here. Swish. The moment her wrist was grasped, Wai So-yeon aimed a kick at Mok Jae-eun's head. However, it wasn't an ordinary kick. The kick was also imbued with a sharp murderous intent. It's possible with the feet too? Faced with the sharp murderous intent unleashed by her kick and the exceptionally sharp strike, Mok Jae-eun slightly tilted his head back. Wai So-yeon's kick narrowly missed. She didn't stop there and unleashed a series of attacks. Heavenly Sword Technique. Third Stance Heavenly Research Sword. Swoosh 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 swoosh. From Wai So-yeon's hands, a light like starlight shone, and simultaneously, 8 sword fingers attempted to pierce Mok Jae-eun's vital acupoints. The sword intent that rises, then rises further and surpasses that is called the Peerless Sword Intent. 6 Heavens. The sword intent of the Heavenly Sword Technique, the unique technique of the society leader, one of the 6 absolutes known as the pinnacle of the Central Plains martial world, was a truly flawless and peerless sword intent. However, swoosh 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 swoosh. Amidst her sword technique, Mok Jae-eun's sword fingers cunningly penetrated. It was a trajectory of sword fingers that even she hadn't anticipated. This caused a glint of interest to appear in Wai So-yeon's eyes. How? As if reading her mind, Mok Jae-eun spoke. You put in more force than the young master's sword intent. Ah. Right. Come to think of it, this fellow said he had also confronted first senior brother. But he was truly absurd. He must have only fought first senior brother once. Yet she never expected him to respond in such a way to the Heavenly Sword Technique, known for its flawless and near-perfect sword intent. Clang 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 clang. As her murderous intent and Mok Jae-eun's murderous intent collided, cracks formed in the air, and a sharp sound like metal clashing spread out. Swish. As Mok Jae-eun's single sword penetrated the gap in her technique, she hastily switched her sword intent. Heavenly Sword Technique. Fifth stance, chaotic world of the celestial origin. Like a falling water droplet creating a hole in a rock over a long period, the sword path was directed towards a single point. The fifth stance possessed a power comparable to the secret techniques of the heavenly sword technique. However, clang 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 clang. Mok Jae-eun created a dense net with his sword fingers and instead pressured her sword intent. As a result, Hwai So-yeon's expression grew increasingly gloomy. Who the hell was this person? How was he penetrating the heavenly sword technique in such a way? Even if he hadn't fought first senior brother for 3 days and nights, he seemed too familiar with the sword intent. It was as if he had some knowledge of the heavenly sword technique. Is this what a true genius is? Just half a month ago she had considered him to be nothing more than a novice, but now he had become an immeasurable, colossal mountain. He was truly a monstrous being. How wonderful would it have been if such a person had followed her with sincere loyalty. However, this person was undoubtedly a vessel that no one could control. He was a brazen man who would come to her after his martial arts had advanced, cause a commotion and even bring shame upon her. She could understand why first senior brother had fought with this person. Swish. It was at that moment. In an instant his figure dispersed like smoke, and Mok Jae-eun had already penetrated the sword trajectory created by Hwai So-yeon, arriving right in front of her. Clear and manifest water crossing steps. The danger of this movement technique lay in its high-speed movement at close range. The stepping method was so marvelous that it was difficult to catch its movements with the naked eye even within a mere 10 steps. How the hell did he learn this? No matter how much she thought about it, she couldn't understand. But that wasn't the important thing right now. Hwai So-yeon hurriedly raised her murderous intent with her left hand, trying to block Mok Jae-eun. However, Mok Jae-eun's movement was much faster than hers. In an instant he lightly grasped her left wrist, pressed the acupoint on her shoulder and pushed her back. Ugh. Swoosh. Hwai So-yeon's body was pushed back about 6 steps in an instant. Ha. A sigh escaped Hwai So-yeon's lips. Strong. Undeniably, Mok Jae-eun was currently a step above her. The difference between having crossed the threshold and not having crossed it was evident. However, he grasped the acupoint on my shoulder, not my neck. It seemed as if he was trying to subdue her without injury. Because of this, she felt even more unpleasant. Is he going easy on me? In the first place, it didn't feel like he was treating her as a martial artist. Give that body to me. Clench. Hwai So-yeon bit her lip tightly. Was it because he saw her as a woman after all? Because of that, along with the shame as a martial artist, a strange feeling blossomed within her emotions. This should be enough, right? Of course, contrary to her resentful state of mind, Mok Jae-eun was merely following Chong Ryong's request and adjusting his strength appropriately to subdue Hwai So-yeon without any flaws. If it weren't for her unique physique, where her true energy overflowed to an extraordinary degree compared to her martial prowess, he would have already subdued her. Ho ho ho. Well done, mortal. Chong Ryong spoke as if satisfied. Until now, she had postponed her plans for the future, not knowing when Mok Jae-eun would become stronger, but she had been eyeing Hwai So-yeon's body, which resembled her own. Possession was no different from seizing a body. However, since Hwai So-yeon's appearance was so similar to her own, obtaining her body felt like being reborn, making her excited. Strike her brain and make her lose consciousness. From then on I will take care of the rest. As you wish. With that, Mok Jae-eun pushed Hwai So-yeon further, eventually making her fall to the ground. Thud. Ah. Unable to maintain her posture, Hwai So-yeon fell to the ground and was seized by a sense of shame at the sight of Mok Jae-eun looking down at her from above while pressing her down. Was this bastard really after her body? As a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society leader, no one had been able to directly express their feelings towards her as a member of the opposite sex. Yet to think he would blatantly toy with her like this. Let go. I can't do that. Do you think you can handle the consequences of doing something like this? Consequences? If I thought I couldn't handle it, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. And once you give me your body, you'll always be with me anyway. What's the big deal? With those words, Mok Jae-eun smiled brightly. It was truly strange. When she first saw him, she did consider him to be a man of exceptional beauty and handsomeness. However, since she intended to walk the path of a leader, that was the end of it. But strangely, once she became aware that Mok Jae-eun was trying to have her, Wai So-yeon's face flushed red in an instant. Thump, thump, thump. Her heart was beating wildly like crazy. Why was this happening? It was difficult to control her frantically beating heart. You'll always be with me anyway. What's the big deal? Mok Jae-eun's words kept echoing in her mind, leaving her in a state of confusion. Did this bastard desire her as a woman to the extent that he was willing to bear all the repercussions? Wai So-yeon gazed into Mok Jae-eun's eyes. His unwavering gaze, which seemed upright, was directly fixed on her face. Excluding her master and senior brothers, he was the first man to look her straight in the eye like this. As he did so, Mok Jae-eun brought his hand to her face. To be precise, he was trying to strike her forehead with his palm, causing damage to her brain. At that moment she spoke. Wait. Of course, there was no way Mok Jae-eun would stop at those words. But Wai So-yeon spoke in a slightly trembling voice. Do you truly desire me as a woman? At her words, Mok Jae-eun furrowed his brows. Desire her as a woman? It seemed this woman had misunderstood something. Although he had no interest in romantic relationships or emotional attachments between men and women, Mok Jae-eun could immediately discern how she had interpreted his words. Was there room for misunderstanding? Since she was unaware of his true intentions, she naturally had no choice but to misinterpret his words about wanting her body. However, there was no need for further explanation now. So, ignoring it, he tried to bring his palm to her forehead, but whoosh. At that moment, Wai So-yeon's energy surged intensely. Her internal energy, which had soared tremendously in an instant, surpassing the level of simply drawing upon it, exceeded even Mok Jae-eun, who had reached the early stage of the transformation realm. What is this? But that wasn't the end. Rumble. Along with it, an immense cold energy seeped out from Wai So-yeon. The cold energy was so strong that frost formed on their surroundings in an instant, and white breath flowed from Mok Jae-eun's mouth. Sizzle. Wai So-yeon's hair gradually turned white. Her appearance was truly mystical. At her transformation, Chong Ryong exclaimed in disbelief. Ha! Mortal, this wench possesses the Heavenly Een Absolute Meridians. Heavenly Een Absolute Meridians? It's a rare physique that appears once every few hundred years. Due to the incessant rise of Een true energy from all meridians, the blood in her body is blocked, and she is destined to die young before even reaching adulthood. But she seems fine. It seems she has learned how to suppress the energy within her body. Otherwise, there was no way she could have survived without the Een energy running rampant like this. It was Chong Ryong's first time seeing the Heavenly Een Absolute Meridians. The Heavenly Een Absolute Meridians, known as a cursed physique with a predestined short lifespan, could yield the tremendous advantage of inexhaustible true energy regardless of cultivation if overcome, but it was no easy feat. Until now, she had never heard of anyone overcoming the Heavenly Een Absolute Meridians. This wench. Could it be that she had overcome the Heavenly Een Absolute Meridians? Crack, crack. But blue veins had appeared around Wai So-yeon's eyes. No, that's not it. As expected, she hadn't overcome the Heavenly Een Absolute Meridians. Her prediction was accurate. Currently, Wai So-yeon had released the true Harmony Forbidden Gate secrets she had learned from her master and opened up the true divine Een energy of the Absolute Meridians throughout her body, which she had been suppressing with great difficulty. Half a moment at most. You must not exceed that. It was the time her master had warned her about. If she maintained this state for more than half a moment, her entire body's meridians would freeze and she would die. However, during that brief moment she could unleash the extreme Een energy that even a master of the transformation realm couldn't easily deal with. The only ones aware of this fact were her master, the society leader, and herself. I intended to keep it hidden as a trump card against first senior brother, but to think she would end up using it against this man. If he managed to overcome even this cursed power that could take her life, she would accept it as fate. Pouring out her true divine Een energy, she spoke. You want to have me? Then try to break this cursed power as well. Whoosh. Rumble. The immense true divine Een energy caused the clothes of Wai So-yeon and Mok Jae-eun to freeze entirely. The surroundings within a radius of a dozen zhang were filled with cold energy, reminiscent of the frigid cold of the northern sea. Wai So-yeon drew upon even more true energy, trying to fling Mok Jae-eun away from on top of her, where he was pressing down on her shoulders. Whoosh. It was at that very moment. Sizzle. Instantly, a dark red energy surged from Mok Jae-un's entire body. As a result, the dark red energy and the cold energy she was emitting collided, and the surroundings were engulfed in steam. This is. Why So-yeon could instinctively recognize what this energy was. It was poison energy. Impossible. Emitting poison energy from one's entire body was the realm of a poison man. What the hell was going on? Although Mok Jae-un had been accepted as Poison King's disciple, it had only been 2 hours ago. Yet in that short time he had mastered Poison King's unique technique, the Perishing Poison Scripture, and reached the realm of a poison man, which could be considered the pinnacle of that technique. How could such an absurd thing happen? It was utterly unbelievable. But then Mok Jae-un's voice reached her ears. You're curious about how I dealt with the eldest young master, right? What? Before his words could even end, Mok Jae-un embraced the lying Wai So-yeon. Now sleep. Sizzle. At that moment, as the cold energy and poison energy collided, even stronger steam billowed out. However, this led to a perplexing situation for Wai So-yeon. The vicious poison energy also carried heat, causing the frozen clothes of the two, who had been emitting true divine yin energy and cold energy, to crumble. Crumble. You. As their clothes shattered and bare skin touched, Wai So-yeon's cheeks turned bright red as if they would burst. In that instant, Mok Jae-un detected a momentary fluctuation in her energy, and he could identify the source of her rampaging heavenly yin absolute meridian's energy. Found it. It was the central floodgate acupoint of the conception vessel meridian. Mok Jae-un pushed the perplexed Wai So-yeon away and placed his palm on the central floodgate acupoint below her chest. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, Wai So-yeon hurriedly tried to push Mok Jae-un away. Get your hands off me right now. However, whoosh. Ah. At that moment her slender waist arched backward. Wai So-yeon's eyes trembled as her head tilted back. That was because the rampaging energy of the heavenly yin absolute meridians was being absorbed through Mok Jae-un's palm.